The grand hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with golden light. Towering pillars reached into the darkness above, and banners of dozens of alien empires swayed in the artificial wind. Hundreds of alien leaders filled the chamber, their voices clashing in a chaotic storm of pride and arrogance. At the center of the hall, a massive circular platform hummed to life. A hologram flickered into existence, showing the warfront of the galaxy. Dozens of fleets glimmered like stars, each representing the most powerful civilizations of known space. One corner of the hologram, however, was almost empty. A small cluster of ships floated there, barely visible. The Zorath Dominion's Overlord Kryth stood at the forefront. He was a hulking creature with obsidian-black scales and burning yellow eyes. His clawed hand gestured toward the small image, his lipless mouth curling into a cruel grin. "Behold," Kryth thundered, his voice echoing throughout the chamber. "The humans!" The hologram zoomed in on the tiny cluster of ships. There were so few that they could not even form a proper battle formation. Compared to the massive dreadnoughts of other empires, they looked like toys. A ripple of laughter spread across the chamber. It began as a murmur, then grew into a roaring wave of mockery. "That's it?" A chittering insectoid leader screeched. "Those are the humans? A joke. A species so small they cannot even fill a single dreadnought." Another alien, a reptilian warlord, slammed his tail on the ground as he laughed. "Perhaps they plan to fight with words and stones. I have seen prey animals with larger packs than this so-called army," the crowd howled. Some aliens pounded the floor. Others jeered openly, their mouths splitting into cruel grins. The humans had only recently joined the galactic stage. They were a young species, small in number, and from a single unremarkable planet at the edge of the Orion Spur. Most empires barely knew of their existence. Those who had heard of them considered them a minor nuisance. The Zorath Dominion had been at war with dozens of civilizations for centuries. They crushed fleets numbering in the thousands without breaking a sweat. And now this upstart species dared to declare that they would fight back? It was laughable. It was insulting, Overlord Kryth let the laughter swell before raising a claw for silence. "Let this be a lesson to all," he said, his voice filled with venom. "The humans claim they will resist our rule with this pitiful fleet they call the Tiny Army. Watch closely, and you will see what happens to those who defy the Dominion." The hologram shifted, showing the Zorath's overwhelming fleets moving toward human-controlled space. The comparison was absurd. Thousands of warships advancing against a handful of fragile vessels. The hall erupted into laughter again. Some leaders mocked human voices, mimicking screams and cries for mercy. Others shouted out wagers on how long the humans would last. "One rotation." Someone shouted, "Half a rotation." Another yelled, "A single battle. Their species will vanish like dust." As the laughter reached its peak, Kryth turned away from the hologram, his grin widening. "They will be exterminated. Their world burned, and the galaxy will remember the price of weakness." The crowd roared its approval, while the galaxy laughed, far away, deep beneath the surface of a dead moon. Silence reigned. A secret human base sat hidden in the darkness. Its walls were thick with shielding, and no signal escaped its depths. Inside the command chamber, Commander Elias Vance stood alone, his hands clasped behind his back. The hologram of the Galactic Council floated before him, projecting the laughter of the alien leaders. Vance was a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp, calculating eyes. His face was hard and unreadable, forged by years of war and loss. Unlike the jeering aliens, he did not smile or frown. He simply watched. The room around him was dim, filled with the quiet hum of machinery. Screens displayed data from dozens of human strike teams, each preparing in silence for what was to come. One of his officers entered, a young lieutenant named Kara Holt. She hesitated before speaking. "Sir, the broadcast is everywhere. The entire galaxy is mocking us. Even some of our allies are losing faith. They say we are sending lambs to the slaughter." Vance's gaze didn't waver from the hologram. "Let them laugh," he said in a low, cold voice. Kara frowned. With respect, sir, morale is collapsing. The Zorath are moving with full strength. They will destroy us before we even begin. Vance finally turned to face her. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. "Do you know what the Zorath see when they look at us, Lieutenant?" he asked. Kara shook her head. "They see prey," Vance said. "They see something small and weak, something to crush beneath their claws. That is their first and greatest mistake." Kara hesitated. "But our fleet really is small, sir. Even with every ship we have, we cannot match them in open battle." Vance stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "War is not always about numbers. The galaxy has grown arrogant. They believe only size and power matter. But we humans, we fight differently." He turned back to the hologram, watching the laughing aliens as if they were already ghosts. "They will learn the truth soon enough." The lights dimmed as a new display flickered to life. Instead of showing the weak human fleet, it showed dozens of hidden operations scattered across enemy space. Small, specialized strike teams, stealth ships so small they could hide in asteroid belts, weapons designed not to destroy armies outright, but to shatter their minds and spirits. Kara's eyes widened as she saw the scale of the hidden plan. This isn't a fleet," she whispered. "It's something else entirely," Vance nodded. "The tiny army is a lie," he said. "What the galaxy sees is exactly what we want them to see. They think we are foolish enough to fight them head-on. Meanwhile, the real fight will take place in the shadows." He pointed to a blinking icon marked Operation Shadowstorm. "This is our true weapon. Not strength, not numbers, fear. We will strike from the darkness again and again until they no longer trust their own defenses. Until they see a human soldier in every shadow. By the time they understand, it will be too late." Kara swallowed hard. "Sir, this plan is dangerous. If even one mission fails, the Zorath will know what we are doing." Vance's face remained stone cold. "Every mission will succeed, because failure is not an option. The future of our species depends on this." Far away, aboard a small stealth vessel, a human strike team prepared for their first mission. Their leader, Corporal Mason, checked his gear silently. His squad of 8 soldiers sat in silence, each one hardened by training and sacrifice. Their target, a Zorath communications hub deep inside enemy space. Destroying it would sever the Dominion's ability to coordinate their fleets for weeks. Mason's voice was calm and steady. "They think we are weak. They think this is a joke. By the time we're done, they won't be laughing anymore." The squad members exchanged grim nods. None of them expected to return home, but they understood their role. The galaxy would see humans as pests now. Soon, they would see them as predators. While the human strike team moved silently toward their target, the Galactic Council continued its display of arrogance. Overlord Kryth lounged on a throne-like chair, enjoying the mockery of his fellow leaders. "By this time next cycle," he boasted, "the human homeworld will burn. Their so-called tiny army will be erased, and no one will dare defy the Dominion again." A slender, amphibious ambassador raised a glass of glowing liquid. "To the extinction of humanity." The hall erupted in cheers once again. None of them noticed the faint shimmer of a human surveillance drone, hidden high among the rafters, silently recording every word. Back in the human base, Commander Vance stood before his officers. "The Zorath believe this war will be quick," he said. "They think they are hunting us, but they do not understand what it means to hunt a human." He looked each officer in the eye. "When predators underestimate their prey, they become prey themselves. That is the lesson we will teach them." He raised his hand toward the holographic display of enemy space. "Tonight, Operation Shadowstorm begins. The galaxy thinks we are sending a handful of weak ships to die. Let them think that. Let them laugh." His voice hardened, cutting through the room like a blade. "Because when the laughter stops, there will be only silence." As the strike team's vessel approached the Zorath communications hub, Mason whispered into his comms. "Team ready. Weapons hot." The ship's stealth systems powered down, revealing their presence for the first time. The Zorath guards didn't even have time to react before the humans struck. Gunfire erupted in the corridors. Silent, efficient, merciless. Within minutes, the entire station was under human control. Mason placed a small device in the heart of the communications hub. Its timer blinked red. He tapped his comms. Package set. Mission complete. As they escaped into the void of space, the device detonated, ripping the station apart. The explosion lit up the darkness like a new star. Across the Zorath fleet network, chaos erupted as their communications went silent. For the first time, the mighty Dominion felt a flicker of fear. In the Galactic Council, Overlord Kryth was mid-sentence when a messenger burst into the hall. "My lord, the communications hub has been destroyed. Entire sectors are cut off." The laughter died instantly. The chamber fell silent. Kryth's claws dug into the throne's armrests. "Who did this?" he hissed. The messenger trembled. Witnesses say, "Humans," Kryth froze. For the first time, doubt entered his eyes. Back in the hidden human base, Vance received the report of Mason's success. A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "They think they are still in control," he murmured. "They are wrong." He turned to his gathered officers. "Tonight the galaxy laughed at us. Tomorrow they will fear us. Soon they will never laugh again." The room fell into tense, determined silence. Operation Shadowstorm had begun. The darkness of deep space shimmered with distant stars, silent and eternal. A single massive Zorath dreadnought glided through the void like a black dagger, its hull bristling with weapons. Inside its vast metallic halls, alien officers feasted. A victory celebration was underway. Laughter, guttural roars, and the sound of claws scraping metal filled the grand banquet hall as the Zorath warriors celebrated their most recent conquest. Overlord Kryth sat at the head of the table, his sharp teeth glinting in the dim red light. He raised a cup of thick, dark liquid and roared, "To the fall of yet another world. Soon the humans will join the others in ashes. Their pathetic resistance will be crushed before the galaxy, and their so-called tiny army will be scattered like dust." The warriors slammed their cups together, the sound echoing through the ship. Their laughter was loud and cruel. A smaller Zorath officer, his scales pale from youth, leaned forward nervously. "My lord, if I may speak, there are rumors. Small isolated attacks on supply convoys. Entire patrols vanishing without trace." Kryth sneered, dismissing the words with a wave of his claw. "Rumors spread by cowards. Nothing more than deserters fleeing battle. The humans cannot possibly strike us. They are weak, pathetic creatures. Even their own allies laugh at their efforts." The young officer bowed his head in silence, though unease remained in his glowing eyes. Far from the merriment, deep in the engineering section of the dreadnought, a vent cover slid silently aside. 2 human soldiers emerged from the shadows, their black armor blending with the darkness. Their movements were precise and silent, like predators stalking prey. Corporal Mason's voice was barely a whisper through his helmet comms. "Alpha team in position. Proceeding to Phase 2. Across the ship, other teams were already moving. 8 soldiers in total, divided into pairs, weaving through the massive vessel like ghosts. The Zorath's great warship was unaware that death had already crept aboard. Mason planted a small device on a control panel. The screen flickered, then went dark. Lights throughout the corridor dimmed. Alarms began to chirp faintly, confusion spreading among the alien crew. Mason allowed himself the faintest smile. Let the panic begin. Back in the banquet hall, the celebration faltered. Lights flickered overhead. The music cut out. A distant explosion rumbled beneath the floor. Kryth's eyes narrowed. "Report," he growled. No response came. The communication systems were dead. Another explosion shook the ship, this time closer. Zorath warriors sprang to their feet, drawing weapons and hissing in confusion. Then the humans struck. From the shadows, Mason's squad opened fire with silenced rifles. The Zorath, massive and powerful, were caught completely off guard. Their size and strength meant nothing against the humans' speed and precision. Each shot was deliberate, every movement coordinated. Where the Zorath relied on brute force, the humans moved like a pack of hunters, targeting weak points and vanishing before retaliation came. The banquet hall erupted into chaos. Kryth roared, throwing over the heavy table and ducking behind it as his warriors fell one by one. "Find them!" "Kill them!" he shouted, but the enemy was invisible. A young Zorath soldier managed to glimpse a human for the first time. The sight froze him with primal fear. Unlike the towering Zorath, the human was small and lean, its armor smooth and dark, its face hidden behind a reflective visor. The human moved with terrifying speed, ducking into cover and firing with deadly accuracy. "They are everywhere," the young soldier whispered in terror before a burst of gunfire silenced him forever. Mason's voice cut through the comms. "Targets neutralized." Moving to extraction, his team raced through the corridors, planting charges at key locations. They didn't need to destroy the entire dreadnought. They only needed to cripple it in a way that would terrify the enemy. In the command center, chaos reached its peak. Zorath officers screamed for orders, but nothing worked. Weapons were offline. Communications were dead. Even the ship's engines had been sabotaged. The mighty dreadnought, pride of the Dominion, was now a helpless carcass drifting through space. The final blow came when Mason triggered the charges. A chain of explosions ripped through the engineering section. The Zorath barely had time to comprehend what was happening before emergency bulkheads slammed shut and fire engulfed entire decks. As the humans escaped through their stealth shuttle, Kryth stood amid the flames, his chest heaving with rage. His warriors lay dead or dying around him. Through the smoke, he glimpsed a small black device blinking red, projecting a hologram of a human figure. The figure was faceless, its voice calm and cold. "You see us as prey," it said. "You were wrong," the device exploded, blasting Kryth backward. When he staggered to his feet, coughing, the humans were gone. Mason's shuttle drifted silently away, vanishing into the dark void. Inside, the team sat in silence, their faces grim. Mason looked back at the burning wreckage of the dreadnought and finally spoke. "First blood drawn? Now they know we are coming." Back on the hidden human base, Commander Elias Vance received the mission report. His eyes scanned the data with satisfaction. The dreadnought was crippled. Thousands of Zorath were dead. Panic was spreading through the enemy ranks. Kara Holt entered the room breathless. "Sir, news of the attack is spreading across the galaxy. No one knows how we did it. The other empires are terrified. Some think the humans have a secret superweapon." Vance shook his head. "Fear is the weapon. Let them believe whatever they wish. The less they understand, the stronger we become." Kara hesitated. "The Zorath won't sit quietly after this. They will hunt us relentlessly." "That is exactly what I want," Vance said. His voice was calm, but beneath it lay the fire of relentless determination. "The more they chase us, the more mistakes they will make. They will grow paranoid, suspicious of their own allies. And when they begin to tear themselves apart, we will strike again." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, reports of the attack spread like wildfire. At first, many dismissed it as an accident. But then, the survivors began to speak. A trembling alien officer was interviewed by his superiors. His voice shook as he described the horror. They were not an army. They were hunters, small, fast, precise. They struck from nowhere and vanished into the darkness. We never saw their faces. We never heard them coming. It was as if shadows themselves came alive. The Zorath leaders listened in silence, their laughter from days before now gone. Overlord Kryth stood at the center of the War Council, his eyes burning with hatred. "So, the humans think they can frighten us. They believe they can make the Dominion tremble." His claws raked the metal table, leaving deep gouges. "Put a bounty on every human soldier. I want their heads displayed across every Dominion world." Another Zorath general shifted uneasily. "My lord, is it wise to react so strongly? It may give them legitimacy in the eyes of other species." Kryth's roar silenced him. "Wise or not, I will not allow these vermin to humiliate us. If they wish to fight from the shadows, then we will burn every shadow to ash. I will personally lead the hunt. The humans will learn what it means to defy the Dominion." Back in the human command base, Vance watched the Dominion's furious declaration on his screen. His face remained calm, but a small spark of satisfaction glimmered in his eyes. He turned to his officers. "They are angry," he said softly. "Good. Anger clouds judgment. Fear sharpens ours. The more they rage, the closer we come to victory." Kara looked uneasy. Sir, they've put a bounty on every human soldier. They won't stop until they find us. Vance's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. Let them come. We are ready. As he spoke across the galaxy, hundreds of small human strike teams prepared for their next missions. They were few, but they were relentless. The galaxy still believed the tiny army was just a small fleet of fragile ships. They had no idea that the true strength of humanity was not in numbers, but in precision, unity, and an unbreakable will to survive. The Zorath dreadnought drifted lifeless in space, a silent monument to the arrogance of an empire. It was the first crack in their seemingly unshakable power. The galaxy watched with growing unease as rumors spread. Some whispered that the humans were demons from a forgotten age. Others said they had mastered technology beyond understanding. But for Commander Elias Vance and his soldiers, the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. Humans were not demons. They were not gods. They were hunters, and the hunt had only just begun. The cold void of space was silent, but inside a small human outpost on the edge of contested territory, alarms screamed. Red lights flashed across the metal corridors as soldiers rushed to defensive positions. This outpost was one of humanity's most remote bases, a refueling and supply station meant to support the stealth teams operating behind enemy lines. It was supposed to be hidden, protected by layers of encryption and stealth fields. It was not hidden anymore. Corporal Mason sprinted through the narrow hallways, his boots thudding against the floor, his breath ragged inside his helmet. Behind him, two other soldiers ran, their weapons clutched tightly in shaking hands. The walls trembled as heavy impacts rocked the station. "Report!" Mason barked into his comms. A panicked voice answered, static breaking the transmission. "Multiple breaches, west sector gone. Zorath assault teams inside the base. The voice cut off in a scream, replaced by the sickening sound of tearing metal and gunfire. Mason swore under his breath. They had been found. Somehow the Zorath Dominion had tracked them here. The station shook again, this time harder. A ceiling panel fell, crashing to the floor with a metallic clang. Mason grabbed the nearest soldier by the arm. "Get to the command center. Evacuate the non-combatants. If the Dominion captures anyone alive, they'll tear the locations of our other bases right out of their minds." The soldier hesitated, fear in his eyes. "What about you?" Mason's voice was cold. "I'll hold them off." The two soldiers ran, leaving Mason alone in the flickering light. He checked his rifle, slammed a fresh magazine into place, and moved toward the sound of battle. The metallic stench of blood and burned circuitry filled the air. The corridor ahead was littered with bodies. Human soldiers lay twisted and broken, their armor torn open by the Zorath's vicious claws. And among the corpses were the hulking bodies of the attackers, massive reptilian figures with jagged black armor and glowing yellow eyes. These were not ordinary Zorath infantry. These were hunters, elite units created for a single purpose, to kill humans. One of the hunters turned its head toward Mason, its nostrils flaring as it scented him. It let out a low, guttural growl before charging. Mason opened fire, his shots precise and relentless. The hunter staggered, roared, and kept coming. At the last second, Mason dropped to one knee and fired upward into the creature's throat. The hunter collapsed, thrashing violently before going still. "Not so tough," Mason growled, though his hands trembled. He'd fought Zorath before, but never creatures like these. A voice crackled in his earpiece. It was Commander Elias Vance, speaking from the hidden human command center light years away. "Mason, status report." Mason ducked behind a half-collapsed bulkhead as another explosion rocked the station. "Sir, they found us. These aren't standard troops. They brought specialized kill teams. They're coming for us, and they know exactly how to fight us." Vance's silence stretched for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with controlled fury. "They've studied us, learned from the attacks we've made. The hunters have become the hunted." Mason gritted his teeth. "Sir, we need extraction. If they take this base, we lose more than supplies. They'll trace our networks, find every hidden team." "Negative," Vance said sharply. You must destroy all data and delay them at any cost. Reinforcements are already en route, but they won't arrive in time. You hold the line, Corporal. That's an order. The comm went dead. Mason clenched his jaw. There was no room for fear now. Only action. He moved deeper into the station, weaving through smoke-filled corridors as the hunters advanced. Every sound echoed. The heavy thuds of their armored feet, the guttural clicks of their alien language, the hiss of their breathing. In the command center, Dr. Lyra Chen worked frantically at a console. Streams of data scrolled across the screen as she tried to wipe sensitive files before the Zorath could access them. Sweat beaded on her forehead. "Doctor, we need to move!" A nearby soldier shouted. "Not yet!" Lyra snapped, her fingers flying across the controls. If this data falls into their hands, every human strike team will be compromised. "Just give me one more minute." The door exploded inward, a massive hunter stepping through the smoke. Its yellow eyes locked on Lyra. The soldier beside her raised his weapon, but the alien moved faster, slamming him into the wall with bone-crushing force. Lyra froze, terror paralyzing her. The hunter raised its claw to strike. Then Mason was there, firing a burst directly into the creature's head. The alien toppled backward, shaking the floor as it fell. Mason grabbed Lyra's arm. "Move now!" Together, they sprinted down a side corridor. Behind them, more hunters poured into the command center, their roars echoing through the station. As they ran, Lyra gasped, "How did they find us?" This base was hidden. Mason's jaw tightened. "Someone talked, or someone leaked our location." Lyra's eyes widened. "A traitor?" "Maybe," Mason said grimly. "Or maybe they just learned how we think." They reached a sealed chamber deep within the station. Inside was a glowing sphere of energy, the station's core reactor. If detonated, it would destroy the entire base and everyone in it. Lyra's face went pale. "You're not serious," Mason nodded. "If the Dominion gets this base, humanity is finished. We destroy it, or everything we fought for dies." He opened a secure channel to Vance. "Commander, we're at the reactor." "Setting charges now." Vance's voice was heavy. "Do it, Corporal." No hesitation. Before Mason could respond, a hunter's roar shook the chamber. Two of the creatures burst through the wall, weapons raised. Mason dove to the side, firing as he rolled. Lyra scrambled behind a console, trying to stay out of the line of fire. The battle was brutal and close. The hunters were stronger, faster, and armored like tanks. But Mason was human, and humans were cunning. He lured one hunter toward a cluster of pipes, then shot a valve, releasing a burst of scalding steam. As the creature reeled, he finished it with a point-blank shot to the head. The second hunter charged him, claws outstretched. Mason barely had time to grab a length of metal pipe from the floor. He jammed it into the creature's mouth, using its momentum to drive it back toward the reactor chamber's edge. With a final, desperate shove, he sent the alien tumbling into a glowing energy conduit. The creature shrieked as its body was consumed by the reactor's energy. Breathing heavily, Mason staggered back to Lyra. She stared at him, wide-eyed. "You're insane. Insane keeps us alive," Mason said grimly. He began setting the charges on the reactor. Lyra's hands shook. "Once you arm those, we'll have less than 5 minutes to escape." "Plenty of time," Mason said, though his voice betrayed doubt. As he finished, the comm crackled again. It was Vance. "Corporal, enemy transmissions are spiking. They've broadcast the location of Earth. They know where our homeworld is." Lyra gasped. "No. If they hit Earth directly," Mason's blood ran cold. "How long before they get there?" 2 days at most," Vance said grimly. "We cannot let them win here, or they'll have the confidence to strike at the heart of humanity. Delay them at all costs." The hunter's guttural roars echoed closer. More were coming. Mason grabbed Lyra's wrist and pulled her toward the last escape tunnel. "Move!" They sprinted as the charges began to beep, their red lights flashing faster and faster. The station shook violently, debris raining down around them. Mason didn't look back. They burst out of the escape tunnel just as the reactor detonated. A blinding flash filled space, followed by a shockwave that ripped the outpost apart. Their small escape pod tumbled through the chaos. Inside, Lyra clutched her seat, trembling. Mason stared silently out the viewport at the debris field. "They're adapting," Lyra whispered. "They studied us, and now they're coming for us with our own tactics. If they reach Earth—" "They won't," Mason said, his voice like iron. "Not while I'm still breathing." Far away, in the hidden human command center, Vance stood before his officers. The destruction of the outpost appeared on the screen behind him. His face was grim, his jaw tight. "The Dominion thinks they've won a victory today," he said. "But they've only awakened something far more dangerous." Kara Holt spoke quietly. "Sir, what do we do now?" Vance turned to her, his eyes hard. "We prepare. If they want to hunt us, then we show them what true hunters are." He looked back at the screen, at the glowing coordinates of Earth now exposed to the enemy. His voice was low and deadly. "They've declared war on our home. Now we bring the war to theirs." In the darkness of space, the surviving hunters regrouped on their ships. One of them spoke in guttural tones, its translator hissing in broken human language. "They call themselves predators," it said. "We will show them prey." But far away, in his escape pod, Mason clenched his fist around a bloodied dog tag. His voice was barely a whisper. "No," he said. "We are the predators, and this galaxy is about to find out." The blackness of space above Earth shimmered as thousands of lights flickered to life. They weren't stars, they were enemy ships. From orbit, the Zorath Dominion's invasion fleet blotted out the sky. Massive dreadnoughts and carriers formed an unbroken wall of steel and fire, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Below, on Earth, civilians ran through the streets in chaos. Sirens wailed. Entire cities were being evacuated to underground shelters. Dr. Lyra Chen stood on the balcony of the command tower, staring up at the burning streaks of descending enemy dropships. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. "They found us," she whispered. "They actually found Earth." Commander Elias Vance stood beside her, his arms folded behind his back. His face was calm, but his eyes were ice. "They didn't just find us, Doctor," he said. "They think this is the end of humanity. Today, we show them how wrong they are." As if to punctuate his words, an explosion lit up the horizon. A human defense platform crumbled under a barrage of enemy fire. Entire districts went dark. Lyra gripped the railing, panic clawing at her throat. "Our defenses are collapsing. We don't have the numbers to hold them off. Even our fleets can't stop that many ships." Vance turned to her, his voice steady and commanding. "Numbers don't win wars. Strategy does. You think this is the first time humanity has been underestimated. Let them think they've cornered us. Let them think Earth is defenseless. That's the trap." Lyra blinked, stunned. "A trap, sir. They have overwhelming force. How can you possibly—" Before she could finish, Vance raised a hand. "Watch." The skies above Earth shimmered again, but this time the lights were different. Small, fast-moving blurs emerged from hiding places no one had noticed before. They came out of asteroid fields, from behind moons, even from within the atmosphere itself. Tiny strike craft, almost invisible to sensors, fanned out across the void in perfect unison. The Zorath commanders didn't notice them at first. Then, without warning, the first enemy dreadnought exploded. A shockwave tore through the fleet as human strike teams attacked with surgical precision, hitting weak points the Zorath didn't even know existed. Lyra gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. What is this?" Vance's cold smile finally appeared. "This," he said, "is Operation Shadowstorm." Above them, chaos erupted. The Zorath fleet scrambled to react, but for every ship they turned toward the new threat. 3 more human attack groups struck from the darkness. The enemy's massive numbers worked against them, their size making them slow and clumsy. On the bridge of his flagship, Overlord Kryth roared in fury. "Where did they come from?" He bellowed, his claws tearing gouges into the command console. "Find them! Destroy them all!" His second-in-command trembled as he reported, "My lord, they were hidden. These aren't conventional fleets. They're micro-strike forces, scattered and invisible. We cannot track them fast enough." Kryth slammed his fist down. "Then burn everything. I want every human nest turned to ash." Back on Earth, Mason and his team launched from a hidden hangar. Their small, agile craft darted through enemy lines, weaving between massive Zorath warships. "This is Mason, Alpha Squad," he said over comms, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Targets locked." Moving to intercept. Explosions lit up space like fireworks as Mason's squad fired their payloads. A colossal carrier split apart, spilling burning wreckage into orbit. The humans didn't fight like a traditional army. They fought like hunters, striking quickly and then vanishing before the enemy could retaliate. As the battle raged, Lyra turned to Vance. "All this time, the tiny army was a decoy?" Vance nodded. "The galaxy laughed at us because they saw what we wanted them to see, a handful of fragile ships. But while they mocked us, we built this. Thousands of hidden strike teams, perfectly coordinated. We are not the prey here, Doctor. We are the predators." Lyra's eyes widened with awe. "You planned this from the very beginning." Vance didn't answer. He simply watched the holographic display as red enemy icons blinked out one by one. On the Zorath flagship, panic spread among the commanders. Reports poured in from across the fleet, each one more disastrous than the last. Dreadnought Alpha 3 destroyed. Sector 12 under heavy attack. "We can't hold them. Our own ships are firing on each other, my lord. They can't tell friend from foe." Kryth's eyes burned with rage. "Enough! Bring me a direct line to their leader. I want to speak to this human." Moments later, a holographic transmission flickered to life in the human command center. Overlord Kryth's massive form filled the room, his voice like rolling thunder. "Human," he snarled, "you think these games will save you? You are nothing but vermin scurrying in the dark." Vance stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Funny," he said, his tone calm and cutting. "That's what we used to say about you." Kryth slammed his clawed fist against the console. "You cannot win. My forces outnumber yours 100 to 1. Vance's cold smile widened. "Numbers don't matter when your soldiers can't sleep at night, when they see a human in every shadow. You don't understand, Kryth. You've already lost." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving Kryth roaring in fury. Meanwhile, Mason's squad boarded a massive enemy cruiser. Moving through the corridors like wraiths, they planted charges at critical points. As they worked, Mason spoke softly over comms. "They thought we were small. They thought they could hunt us. Let's show them what happens when the prey bites back." The team escaped seconds before the cruiser erupted into a blinding explosion, fragments scattering into the void. Back in the human command center, Kara Holt rushed to Vance's side. "Sir, enemy forces are breaking apart. They're retreating in every direction." Vance nodded, his expression still cold and controlled. "Good. Let them run. Veer will do more damage than any weapon we have." Lyra stared at the holographic map, barely able to believe what she was seeing. "We actually turned the tide," she whispered. Vance's gaze hardened. "No," he said. "This was only the opening move. Kryth will not give up so easily. He'll come back with something worse, something desperate." As if on cue, a chilling message came through intercepted enemy communications. The voice was Kryth's, low and full of venom. "Deploy the Oblivion Engine." Lyra's blood ran cold. The Oblivion Engine? That's just a myth. A weapon powerful enough to erase entire planets. Vance's face remained like stone. "It's real," he said. "And now we know what their next move will be." Outside, the Zorath fleet retreated into the darkness, but not in defeat. The galaxy had seen humanity's hidden strength, and for the first time, the great powers trembled. But Kryth was not done. As the battle's fires faded, Vance turned to his officers, his voice calm but deadly. "Operation Shadowstorm is a success, but the war has only just begun." Mason's voice came over the comms, grim and determined. "They won't stop now, Commander. They'll come back with everything they have." Vance stared into the void where Kryth's fleet had disappeared. "Let them," he said coldly. "We've shown them the shadows. Next time we'll show them the storm." The battle was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the war itself. Above Earth, the shattered remnants of the Zorath invasion fleet drifted like burning wreckage in a graveyard. Dozens of enemy dreadnoughts had been destroyed, and countless smaller ships now floated lifelessly in orbit. Humanity had survived Operation Shadowstorm, But victory came with a cost. On the surface, entire cities lay in ruins. Smoke rose from craters where neighborhoods had once stood. Millions were displaced, thousands dead. The once vibrant glow of Earth's night sky was now interrupted by the black silhouettes of ruined defense platforms and the skeletal remains of orbital stations. Commander Elias Vance stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic projections of damage reports and casualty numbers. Each red marker represented lives lost, and there were far too many. His jaw was tight, his expression unreadable, but his hands behind his back trembled ever so slightly. "Status update," he ordered, his voice calm but cold. Kara Holt stepped forward, her uniform torn and smeared with soot. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "Sir, Operation Shadowstorm was a success, but our forces took heavy losses. Nearly a third of our strike teams didn't make it back." She hesitated, then added quietly, "Civilian casualties are catastrophic. Whole sectors of North America and Asia are gone. Relief efforts are underway, but morale is at an all-time low." Vance didn't react outwardly, but inside a storm raged. "We knew the price," he said after a moment. "But we bought Earth another day." Lyra Chen slammed her hand on the table, her voice sharp with anger and grief. "Another day. Commander, millions are dead, and Kryth is still out there. If he really has this Oblivion Engine, the next attack won't just cost us millions. It will cost us everything." Vance turned his cold gaze on her. "You think I don't know that, Doctor?" His voice cracked like a whip, silencing the room. "Every decision I make weighs on me. Every soldier, every civilian, every drop of blood spilled is on my hands. But if we falter now, all of it will have been for nothing." Lyra flinched at his tone, but her fear quickly turned to determination. "Then we need answers. We need to understand what Kryth is planning before it's too late." Far away, aboard the Zorath flagship, Overlord Kryth seethed with fury. The battle had humiliated him. The humans had turned the tables, making his mighty fleet look like fools. His throne room was littered with shattered consoles and the bodies of unfortunate officers who had failed him. But Kryth's fury was not aimless. It was focused, sharp, and deadly. He stood before a massive sealed chamber deep within the ship. The door opened with a hiss, revealing a strange pulsating machine. Dark energy swirled within it like a living storm. The Oblivion Engine, a hunched alien scientist, approached nervously, bowing low. "My lord, the weapon is unstable. If we deploy it without proper calibration, the destruction could—" "Do you think I care about your warnings?" Kryth roared, his voice shaking the chamber. "Humanity has humiliated me. They have made me a laughingstock among the Dominion and the other empires. I will not rest until their world is nothing but ash and memory." He turned his glowing yellow eyes on the trembling scientist. "Prepare the weapon. I want Earth erased from existence." The scientist swallowed hard and nodded. "It will be done, my lord." Back on Earth, Mason's escape craft touched down at a hidden landing site deep beneath a mountain range. He staggered out of the cockpit, his armor scorched and his face lined with exhaustion. A group of medics rushed to help him, but he waved them off. "Later," he rasped. "I need to speak to Commander Vance. Now!" He limped into the war room just as Vance was finishing a briefing with his senior officers. The two men locked eyes. "Corporal Mason," Vance said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Report." Mason stood at attention despite the blood dripping from a gash above his eye. "Operation Shadowstorm worked, sir. We drove them off. But Kryth isn't retreating in defeat. He's planning something worse. I overheard enemy comms during our escape. They spoke of a weapon, something called the Oblivion Engine." Lyra gasped, her worst fears confirmed. "It's real," she whispered. "If Kryth activates it, Earth won't just be destroyed. It will be erased completely, as if it never existed." Vance's expression hardened. "Then we have no choice. We strike first," Kara frowned. "Sir, with what forces? Our armies are shattered. Our fleets are scattered. Even with Shadowstorm survivors, we don't have the strength to attack them head-on." Vance turned to a holographic display of the galaxy. A single red point pulsed deep within enemy space, the likely location of Kryth's flagship. We won't attack them head-on, he said. We'll infiltrate. A single strike team, small enough to slip past their defenses. We destroy the Oblivion Engine before Kryth can deploy it. Mason's voice was grim but resolute. Then send me. I've faced their hunters before. I know how they move, how they think. If anyone can get to that weapon, it's me and my team. Vance nodded slowly. Very well. You'll lead the mission. But understand this, Corporal. This is a one-way trip. If you fail, there won't be a home left to return to. Mason met his commander's gaze without flinching. Understood, sir. Failure isn't an option. Later that night, Mason sat alone in a quiet chamber, staring at a blood-stained dog tag in his hand. It belonged to one of his fallen squadmates, killed during Operation Shadowstorm. Lyra approached softly, her face filled with sorrow. You don't have to do this alone, she said gently. We can find another way. Mason shook his head. Every time we fight them, we lose more people. Every victory costs us dearly. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for everyone who's already paid the price. He clenched the dog tag tightly. If Kryth wants to erase us, then I'll erase him first. Lyra's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Just come back alive, Mason. He didn't answer. As Mason's strike team prepared to depart, Kara pulled Vance aside. Sir, what if Mason fails? What's our contingency plan? Vance's face was grim, his voice low. There is no contingency plan. If Mason fails, there won't be anything left to plan for. He looked toward the distant stars where Kryth's fleet lurked. For now, all we can do is fight, and pay whatever price victory demands. Above Earth, the wreckage of the Zorath fleet continued to drift. Among the twisted hulks, a single damaged hunter ship powered up and slipped into the shadows. Inside, a lone surviving hunter activated a communications beacon, transmitting directly to Kryth's flagship. The message was short. Guttural and filled with hate, "They are coming for you, far away." Kryth's monstrous laughter echoed through the void. "Good," he hissed. "Let them come. Their blood will fuel my vengeance." And so the final stage of the war began, not with armies clashing, but with a desperate gamble. Humanity's survival rested on a single, fragile thread, Mason's mission to destroy the most powerful weapon the galaxy had ever known, the human strike ship. Silent Dagger slipped silently through the darkness of space, its black hull coated with advanced stealth plating that made it invisible to most scanners. Inside, Mason sat in the cockpit, his hands steady on the controls despite the storm of thoughts raging in his mind. Ahead lay the most dangerous mission of his life, a direct infiltration of the Zorath Dominion's most heavily guarded stronghold. Failure meant the end of humanity. Success might cost his life. Behind him, his small team of elite operatives prepared their gear in silence. There were only 5 of them, each handpicked for their skill and absolute loyalty. In the cramped cargo bay, the sound of weapons being loaded and armor being sealed echoed like a drumbeat of impending doom. Kara Holt's voice came through the comms from Earth Command. "Silent Dagger, this is Control. You are entering hostile territory. No reinforcements, no backup. Once you cross the outer perimeter, you're on your own." Mason's jaw tightened. "Copy that, Control. We knew the risks going in." There was a long pause. Then Kara's voice softened. "Good luck, Mason. All of humanity is counting on you." The transmission ended, leaving only the low hum of the ship's engines. Lyra Chen stood near the cockpit, her face pale but determined. She wasn't a soldier, but her knowledge of the Zorath's technology made her vital to the mission. "You know this is a suicide run," she said quietly. "Even if we destroy the Oblivion Engine, there's no guarantee we'll make it out alive." Mason didn't look at her. His gaze was locked on the distant star field ahead. "Alive or dead doesn't matter. If that weapon fires, there won't be a home for us to return to. We either stop it, or we disappear." Lyra shivered at his words, but she didn't argue. Hours later, the Silent Dagger approached the Vortex Expanse, a region of space infamous for its violent gravitational anomalies. The Zorath had deliberately built their stronghold here, knowing no normal fleet could navigate it. As they entered the swirling maelstrom of debris and warped space-time, the ship groaned under the strain. "Easy," Mason muttered, guiding the vessel through narrow gaps between tumbling asteroids and streams of raw energy. The view screen lit up with warning signals as the ship's hull scraped against space debris. From the back, Sergeant Rourke, the team's heavy weapons specialist, grumbled, "Feels like we're flying through a blender." "Tell me again why this place even exists," Lyra answered, without looking up from her datapad. "The anomalies are natural, but the Zorath made them worse. They've been experimenting with artificial gravity wells. If we stray off course even slightly, we'll be torn apart before we even see their defenses," Rourke groaned. "Great pep talk, Doc." Mason cut them off sharply. "Focus. We didn't come this far to die in a debris field." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the swirling chaos gave way to an eerie calm. And there it was, the Oblivion Fortress. The massive station loomed in the darkness like a monstrous spider at the center of its web. Jagged towers of alien metal rose from its core, surrounded by a swirling ring of debris and weapon platforms. At its heart pulsed a sphere of black energy, radiating tendrils of power. Even at a distance, the sight of it sent chills down Lyra's spine. "That's it," she whispered, awestruck and horrified. "The Oblivion Engine," Rourke swore under his breath. "Thing looks like it eats planets for breakfast." Mason's voice was low, controlled, eyes sharp. "This is where the hard part begins." He brought the ship in close, weaving between enemy patrols. The Silent Dagger's stealth systems held, masking them from scanners, but the slightest misstep would give them away. "Landing zone ahead," Mason said. "We'll go in on foot from here." The team gathered at the hatch. Each operative checked their weapons one last time, the air thick with unspoken tension. Lyra clutched a small device, a portable virus she had designed to corrupt the Oblivion Engine's core. "This will overload its systems," she explained. "But it has to be placed directly on the control nexus. Once activated, we'll have about 5 minutes before the entire structure collapses." Rourke smirked grimly. "Plenty of time to run for our lives." Mason's eyes swept over his team. "Remember, this mission isn't about survival. It's about success. If you have to choose, you choose the mission. Understood?" They all nodded, their faces set with grim determination. The hatch opened with a hiss, revealing the cold, metallic surface of the fortress. They stepped out into enemy territory, their movements silent and precise. Inside the fortress, the atmosphere was oppressive. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and something far fouler. Glowing conduits pulsed along the walls, carrying dark energy from the Oblivion Engine's core. The team moved like shadows through the twisting corridors, avoiding patrols and automated defenses. Lyra guided them using a handheld scanner, her hands trembling but steady enough to keep them on course. At one point, they passed a massive chamber filled with alien war machines, thousands of Zorath hunters, dormant in stasis pods. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "If they wake those, we're finished." "Then let's make sure they don't," Mason said coldly, planting a small explosive on the power conduit before moving on. Meanwhile, deep in the command spire, Overlord Kryth stood before a vast viewing window, gazing at the swirling black energy of the Oblivion Engine. His second-in-command approached cautiously. "My lord, our scouts report increased human activity near the vortex expanse." "It is possible they know of our weapon." Kryth's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Let them come. Let them think they have a chance. When the engine fires, not even the memory of their defiance will remain." He turned to a massive control panel, his claws dancing over the alien interface. "Begin final activation sequence. In one cycle, Earth will cease to exist." Back in the lower levels, Mason's team encountered their first serious resistance. A squad of elite hunters burst from the shadows, their glowing eyes and jagged armor gleaming in the dim light. "Contact!" Rourke shouted, opening fire with his heavy rifle. The battle was brutal and close quarters. The hunters were fast and terrifyingly strong, but the humans fought with precision and desperation. Mason ducked under a claw swipe, driving his blade into a hunter's throat. "Move!" he barked. "We can't get bogged down here!" Lyra scrambled behind cover, clutching the virus device to her chest. She wasn't a fighter, but she knew the mission depended on her surviving. As the last hunter fell, Mason didn't waste a second. "On me! The core chamber is just ahead." They burst into the heart of the fortress and froze. The Oblivion Engine towered above them, a swirling sphere of darkness contained within a massive web of alien machinery. Energy arcs danced across the room, filling the air with a low, terrifying hum. Standing before it was Kryth himself, his massive form silhouetted by the engine's glow. "So," Kryth growled, his voice rumbling like thunder. "The insects crawl to my web. How predictable." Rourke raised his weapon, but Mason held up a hand. His eyes locked on Kryth. "We're not here to fight you, Kryth. We're here to end you." Kryth laughed, a deep, guttural sound filled with malice. "You think you can stop me? This weapon will not just destroy Earth. It will erase your entire species from history. There will be no graves, no ruins, no memory of your existence." Lyra stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. "Not if I erase you first." Kryth's eyes narrowed, and with a roar he lunged. The final battle had begun. Mason and his team fought desperately, dodging blasts of dark energy while trying to reach the control nexus. Kryth was a monster in combat, his claws tearing through armor like paper. One by one, Mason's operatives fell, buying precious seconds with their lives. "Go, Lyra!" Mason shouted as he grappled with Kryth. "Plant the virus now!" Lyra sprinted to the control nexus, slamming the device into place. The machine let out a piercing scream as the virus began to take hold. Red lights flared across the chamber, and the entire fortress shook violently. Kryth threw Mason aside, his voice a roar of fury. "What have you done?" Lyra turned, breathing hard, her eyes filled with defiance. 5 minutes, monster. That's all you have left." As alarms blared, Mason dragged himself to his feet, blood streaming from a cut across his face. "Mission's complete," he growled. "Now we run." But Kryth blocked their path, his massive form silhouetted by the collapsing machinery. "You will not leave this place alive," he snarled. Mason raised his rifle, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Then we'll take you down with us." Behind them, the Oblivion Engine's core began to collapse, drawing the fortress into a swirling vortex of destruction. The countdown to annihilation had begun. The Oblivion Fortress shook violently as alarms screamed, and the core of the Oblivion Engine pulsed like a dying star. The entire structure groaned, tearing itself apart as the virus Lyra planted spread through its systems. Mason stood face to face with Overlord Kryth in the collapsing chamber. The alien warlord's glowing yellow eyes burned with fury, his monstrous claws dripping with human blood. "You dare defy me?" Kryth roared, his voice shaking the walls. "Your species will not merely die. I will erase your very memory from the galaxy." Mason spat blood on the floor and raised his battered rifle. "You already made one mistake, Kryth," he said coldly. "You laughed at us." With a guttural roar, Kryth lunged. Mason dove to the side as Kryth's claws ripped through the floor where he'd stood. Rourke, the last surviving member of Mason's strike team, opened fire with his heavy weapon. The barrage staggered Kryth, but the alien warlord shrugged it off and backhanded Rourke across the room. The sergeant's body slammed into a wall, unmoving. "No!" Lyra screamed, clutching the control panel as sparks rained down around her. The countdown timer on her wrist display flashed, 0342. "Mason!" she cried. "The engine's going critical. If we don't leave now, we all die." Mason didn't take his eyes off Kryth. "Get to the ship," he barked. "I'll hold him here." Lyra's face twisted in horror. "You'll never make it out. Go." Mason shouted, his voice like steel. Lyra hesitated for only a second before sprinting toward the exit. Behind her, Kryth and Mason clashed like titans. The alien swung his massive claws, each strike powerful enough to cleave through armor. Mason ducked, weaved, and countered with precise, brutal strikes, using every ounce of human cunning to stay alive. "You fight well for vermin," Kryth snarled, forcing Mason back toward the edge of the collapsing platform. but you cannot win. Your army, your planet, your people, they are nothing compared to the Dominion. Mason gritted his teeth, blocking a swipe with the last of his strength. You think power makes you unstoppable. That's why you'll lose. You never understood us. Kryth tilted his head, mocking curiosity. And what is there to understand about prey? Mason's lips curled into a grim smile. That we were never the prey. With a sudden burst of strength, Mason rammed his shoulder into Kryth's chest, driving the alien backward toward the edge of the core chamber. As Kryth stumbled, Mason reached to his belt and pulled a magnetic charge, slamming it onto the warlord's armor. Kryth looked down in shock. What is this? Mason kicked him hard, sending him tumbling into the swirling vortex of the collapsing Oblivion Engine. This, Mason said through clenched teeth, is humanity's last laugh. He hit the detonator. The charge exploded, and Kryth's roar was swallowed by the blinding light of the core's implosion. Lyra reached the silent dagger just as the ground beneath her began to disintegrate. She stumbled aboard, gasping for breath. "Where's Mason?" she shouted to the ship's pilot. Before the pilot could answer, Mason appeared in the hatch, bruised, bloody, and limping. "Punch it!" he barked, collapsing into a seat. The silent dagger blasted off as the entire fortress came apart behind them. Through the viewport, Lyra watched in awe and terror as the Oblivion Engine imploded, sucking the massive station into a collapsing sphere of darkness before releasing a final, blinding shockwave. The waves slammed into their ship, sending alarms blaring. Mason gripped the controls, fighting to keep them steady. "Hold together, you beautiful piece of junk," he muttered. At last the shockwave passed. When the viewscreen cleared, nothing remained of the fortress. The Oblivion Engine was gone. Kryth was gone. Lyra stared at the empty void, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. We actually did it." Mason didn't answer right away. He simply closed his eyes, breathing heavily. Finally he said, "It's not over, not yet. But we just brought humanity the future." Back on Earth, the celebrations were chaotic and bittersweet. Cities lay in ruins, and countless lives had been lost, but the threat of total annihilation was gone. Crowds filled the streets, cheering as news of the Oblivion Engine's destruction spread across the networks. In the war room, Commander Elias Vance stood before his officers. The holographic map showed the Zorath fleet retreating, their once united empire fracturing into chaos without Kryth's leadership. Kara Holt turned to Vance, awe in her voice. "Sir, Mason and his team did it. The Dominion's chain of command is collapsing. They're retreating across every front." Vance nodded slowly, but his expression remained grim. "Victory always comes with a price. We've won a battle, not the war. There will be others who rise to take Kryth's place." Lyra entered the room, supporting Mason as he limped forward. The room fell silent. Vance approached them, his usually cold eyes softening slightly. "You did what no one else could," he said quietly. "You gave humanity a fighting chance." Mason shook his head. "We didn't win because we were stronger, Commander. We won because they never saw us coming. They laughed at us. They thought we were weak. And that's why they fell." Lyra smiled faintly through her tears. "They underestimated us until it was too late." In the far reaches of space, scattered Zorath survivors huddled in a dimly lit war chamber. Without Kryth, they were leaderless and afraid. One of the hunters growled, its voice dripping with hatred. "The humans think they have won. They think the tiny army has defeated the mighty Dominion," another hunter hissed in response. "Then we will rebuild. And next time, we will not underestimate them." The first hunter stared into the darkness. "Next time, we will strike before they even know we exist." On Earth, Mason stood alone at the edge of a massive crater, the ruins of a city spread out before him. In his hand, he held the same blood-stained dog tag he had carried throughout the war. Lyra approached quietly. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Mason didn't look at her. "No," he said simply. "Too many died for this victory. Too many names to remember." He closed his fist around the dog tag and finally turned to her. "But if their sacrifice means our species survives, then it was worth it." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "The galaxy knows what humanity is capable of now. They'll never laugh at us again." Mason's eyes hardened as he gazed up at the stars. Good, because next time we won't be hiding in the shadows. He turned away, his voice low and resolute. The hunters have become the hunted. And this time, the galaxy will know exactly who we are. As the camera panned upward, the ruins of Earth glimmered below, while countless stars stretched across the endless void. A final message appeared. They laughed at the tiny army until they realized it had human soldiers. The screen faded to black as the deep, ominous hum of the destroyed Oblivion Engine echoed faintly, a haunting reminder of the price of victory.